Lisa's hands shook as she stared at the document. The Korean characters blurred together, but three things stood perfectly clear. Her name, a date from 3 years ago, and the word that made her knees buckle. Divorced. The clerk behind the glass partition watched her with tired eyes, waiting for her to move aside so the next person in line could step forward. Lisa couldn't move. She read the date again. March 15th, 3 years ago. That was a Tuesday. She remembered that Tuesday. Minjun had made her breakfast that morning, kissed her forehead, called her his wife. "There must be a mistake," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pushed the paper back through the slot. "This can't be right. I never signed divorce papers. I never even knew about a divorce." The clerk pulled the document back, adjusted her glasses, and scanned it with the efficiency of someone who had seen every kind of human tragedy pass through this window. "The signature is here. The filing was completed. Everything is in order." "But I didn't sign that." Lisa leaned closer to the glass, desperation creeping into her voice. "That's not my signature. Look at it." The clerk looked. She looked at Lisa. Then she looked back at the paper. The document was processed 3 years ago. If there was an issue, it should have been contested then. She slid the paper back through. "I'm sorry, but according to our records, you have been divorced since this date. Next, please." Lisa stumbled out of the building into the bright Seoul afternoon. The city moved around her like it always did, indifferent and efficient. Cars honked. People rushed past with coffee cups and phone calls. Somewhere nearby, a street vendor sold hot talk, the sweet smell drifting on the autumn air. Lisa had lived in this city for 5 years. She spoke the language. She knew which subway line to take home. Home. She stopped walking. Was it even her home? If she wasn't his wife, what was she? The question sat in her chest like a stone. She pulled out her phone and stared at the screen. Her wallpaper was a photo of them from last month, his arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling at a restaurant in Gangnam. "My wife," he'd told the server when they brought the cake for her birthday. "This is my beautiful wife." Lisa opened her messages. His last text was from 2 hours ago. "Working late tonight, don't wait up. Love you." 3 years. For 3 years she had been living a lie so complete, so carefully constructed, that she hadn't seen a single crack. She thought about their bedroom, the California king bed with the silk sheets he insisted on buying. She thought about the bracelet on her wrist, the one he said was a gift, but never let her take off. She thought about the staff who answered her phone calls, the driver who took her everywhere, the security cameras in every corner of their home. Protection, he called it. Love. But now, standing on a street, corner in a city that suddenly felt foreign again, Lisa saw it differently. She saw a cage, and she had been living in it, sleeping in it, smiling in it, for 3 years without even knowing the door had been locked from the outside. If you're listening to this story and something about it makes your heart race, if you recognize something in Lisa's confusion, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, because what happens next is going to show you exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Lisa met Kang Min-jun on a Tuesday in late spring. She had come to Seoul for a fashion exchange program, a 2-week showcase of emerging designers from around the world. She was 26, fresh out of design school in Lagos, and so full of dreams they practically spilled out of her sketchbook. New York was supposed to be next. She had the scholarship letter folded in her suitcase, tucked between 2 Ankara print samples she'd designed herself. But first, Seoul. First, this opportunity to show her work alongside designers from 15 countries, to maybe make connections, to maybe, just maybe, catch the attention of someone who mattered. The showcase was held in a converted warehouse in Seongsu-dong, all exposed brick and track lighting. Lisa's collection was called Aso Oke Reimagined, traditional Nigerian weaving techniques translated into contemporary silhouettes. She had spent 8 months on 6 pieces, every stitch a prayer, every pattern a piece of home. She stood beside her display, trying not to fidget with the gold necklace her mother had given her for luck, watching people walk past her work with polite nods and camera phones. Then he stopped. He didn't take a photo. He didn't nod politely. He stood in front of her favorite piece, a structured jacket with hand-woven panels that shifted from indigo to gold, and he studied it like it was a painting in a museum. Lisa watched him from the corner of her eye. Tall, probably early 30s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her entire collection. His face was unreadable, focused in a way that made her nervous. Finally, he turned to her. "Did you weave these panels yourself?" His English was perfect, barely accented. Lisa nodded. "Yes, it's a traditional technique from my region in Nigeria, but I modified the loom setup to create tighter weaves for structure." "The color transition," he said, stepping closer. "How did you achieve this gradient without visible seams?" And just like that, they were talking. Not flirting, not yet. Just talking about fabric and technique and the impossible challenge of translating traditional craft into modern fashion. He asked questions that proved he was actually listening, that he understood what he was looking at. When someone from the organizing committee announced the showcase was closing in 10 minutes, Lisa was surprised to find that an hour had passed. "I'm Minjun," he said, extending his hand. "Kang Minjun." Lisa Adeyemi." "Lisa." He said her name carefully, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? I'd like to hear more about your work." She should have said no. She was leaving in 12 days. New York was waiting. But there was something about the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth knowing, worth listening to, worth making time for. So she said yes. They went to a traditional Korean restaurant in Insadong, the kind with low tables and floor seating. Minjun ordered for both of them, navigating the menu with ease, explaining each dish as it arrived. Bulgogi, japchae, kimchi jjigae. He asked about Lagos, about her family, about what made her want to be a designer. And he listened. Really listened. Not the polite listening of someone waiting for their turn to talk, but the deep listening of someone who actually cared about the answers. "My mother is a tailor," Lisa told him, watching steam rise from her soup. "Not fashion, just practical tailoring. School uniforms, church clothes, alterations. But I would sit in her shop after school and watch her work, and I thought it was magic, the way she could look at fabric and see what it wanted to become." "And what does your fabric want to become?" Minjun asked. "Something that makes people feel powerful," Lisa said without hesitation. "Something that makes you stand taller when you put it on. Something that reminds you who you are." He smiled then, really smiled, and something shifted in his expression. "I think your mother's magic rubbed off on you." That first dinner became a second. The second became a walk along the Han River. The walk became coffee, then lunch, then more dinners. 12 days stretched into 3 weeks, then a month. Lisa called the scholarship program and asked if she could defer. They said yes, but only for 1 semester. She told herself she would go to New York in January. She just needed a little more time in Seoul. A little more time with Minjun. He took her to art galleries and poetry readings. He bought her a Korean language textbook and helped her practice pronunciation over breakfast. He introduced her to his favorite bookstore, a 3-story maze of shelves in Daehangno where they could lose hours without speaking. And slowly, without Lisa quite noticing when it happened, Seoul began to feel less like a stopover and more like a destination. "What do you do?" Lisa asked him one evening, 2 months into whatever this was becoming. They were in his apartment, a stunning high-rise in Hanam-dong with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. She had been there a dozen times, but realized she didn't actually know what Min-jun did for work. "Business," he said vaguely, pouring them both wine. "My family has investments in several sectors: real estate, technology, manufacturing. It's boring. Honestly, I'd rather talk about your new designs. Did you finish the sketch you were working on?" Looking back later, Lisa would remember how smoothly he redirected the conversation, how he always did that when she asked about his work, his family, anything too specific about his life before her. At the time, she thought he was just humble, private. She didn't think to wonder what he was hiding. Min-jun proposed on a Thursday in September, 4 months after they met. They were at a temple in the mountains outside Seoul, Bonggunsa, where autumn was just beginning to paint the trees in shades of red and gold. Lisa was sketching in her notebook, trying to capture the way the monks' robes moved in the wind when Min-jun knelt beside her on the stone path. He didn't have a ring. He had something better. A length of fabric, hand-woven silk in a pattern that mixed Korean and Nigerian motifs, something he must have commissioned specifically for this moment. "Lisa," he said, and his voice carried all the weight of the question before he even asked it. "I know this is fast. I know you had other plans, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me, stay in Seoul, build your life here, with me. I'll support your work. I'll support your dreams. You'll never have to worry about money or logistics or any of the practical things that get in the way of art. Just create. Just be you. With me." She should have asked questions. She should have wondered why he was in such a hurry, why he never talked about his family, why he seemed to have unlimited money but vague employment. She should have called her mother, called her friends, taken time to think. But Min-jun was looking at her with such hope, such certainty, and Lisa was tired of being practical. For once in her life, she wanted to be reckless. She wanted to choose love over logic, so she said yes. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. Small ceremony, just a handful of people, in a private room at a luxury hotel. Min-jun said his family couldn't make it. Business obligations, but they sent their blessings. Lisa's mother flew in from Lagos, worried and wonderful in her Ankara print gown, holding Lisa's hands and asking, "Are you sure, my daughter? Are you sure about this?" Lisa was sure. Or she thought she was. The wedding photos showed a woman glowing with happiness, wrapped in white lace and Nigerian coral beads, holding hands with a man who looked at her like she was his entire world. 2 weeks after the wedding, Min-jun sat Lisa down in their new home, a sprawling villa in Seongbuk-dong that she hadn't even known he owned. "I need to talk to you about security," he said, his tone serious in a way she hadn't heard before. "My family's position means there are certain risks. I need to know you're safe." "What kind of risks?" Lisa asked, confused. "Kidnapping, extortion. Korea is safe, but my family's wealth makes us targets." He took her hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. "I'm going to have security personnel around the house, and I'd like you to wear this." He pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a bracelet, delicate platinum links with small diamonds. Beautiful, expensive, and equipped with a GPS tracker that Min-jun explained would help him know she was safe. "It feels a bit much," Lisa said, even as he fastened it around her wrist. "I know. But humor me. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you." He kissed her forehead. "You're everything to me now." So Lisa wore the bracelet, and she got used to the security cameras, and she stopped questioning why there were always staff members nearby, why her phone seemed to have been replaced with a new one that Min-jun insisted was more secure, why the villa felt less like a home and more like a very beautiful hotel where she was the only guest. Min-jun set up a studio for her on the second floor, a gorgeous space with north-facing windows and custom shelving for her fabrics and supplies. He filled it with the best equipment, professional sewing machines, a cutting table, storage for hundreds of fabric bolts. "Create," he told her. "This is your space. Make beautiful things." And she tried. God, she tried. But something had shifted after the wedding. Min-jun was gone more often, work trips he couldn't explain in detail, late meetings that kept him out until midnight. When he was home, he was attentive, loving, perfect. But Lisa began to feel like she was living in a dollhouse, everything beautiful and arranged, but nothing quite real. 3 months into the marriage, Lisa heard her first strange sound. It was early morning. Min-jun was still asleep, and she had gone downstairs for water. From somewhere deep in the villa, she heard a woman's voice. Not staff. The tone was different. Angry. Demanding. Speaking rapid Korean that Lisa's beginner skills couldn't follow. She followed the sound to a door she had never seen open, at the far end of the first-floor hallway. She tried the handle. Locked. The voices stopped. When Lisa mentioned it to Min-jun later, he barely looked up from his newspaper. "Old delivery entrance," he said. "Sometimes staff use it, don't worry about it." But she did worry. She started paying attention to things she had overlooked before, the way Min-jun's phone was always face down, the way certain rooms in the villa were always locked, the way the security staff watched her not like they were protecting her, but like they were keeping track of her. One afternoon, 6 months into the marriage, Lisa saw her. She was in the garden, cutting herbs for a dish she wanted to try making, when movement caught her eye from the far side of the property. There was a woman standing near the wall, partially hidden by trees. She was Korean, elegantly dressed, probably in her early 30s. And she was staring directly at Lisa with an expression of pure hatred. They locked eyes for a long moment. Then the woman turned and disappeared into a part of the villa Lisa had never accessed. When Lisa asked the housekeeper about it later, the woman's face went carefully blank. "I don't know who you mean," she said in halting English. "No other women here." But Lisa had seen her, and she would see her again, always at a distance, always watching, always with that same cold fury in her eyes. Lisa started to feel crazy. She tried to talk to Min-jun about it, but he dismissed her concerns with gentle patience that felt more like condescension. "You're adjusting to a new life," he said. "It's natural to feel a bit paranoid. Maybe you should rest more. Stress isn't good for you." Rest. As if rest was the answer to the growing sensation that she was trapped in something she didn't understand. A year into the marriage, the fashion show opportunity came. A curator from a Seoul gallery had seen Lisa's work online and wanted to include her in a group exhibition of international designers living in Korea. It was small, nothing like the opportunities she had dreamed about in New York. But it was something, a chance to be seen again, to exist outside the villa walls. Lisa was excited for the first time in months. She started preparing pieces, working long hours in her studio, feeling like herself again. 2 weeks before the show, she was in her studio, hand-stitching beadwork onto a collar, when Min-jun came in. He watched her work in silence for a moment, then said, "I don't think you should do the exhibition." Lisa's hands stilled. "What? Why not?" "It's not safe. Too public. Too many strangers. I don't like the idea of you being exposed like that." "Min-jun, it's a gallery show, not a stadium concert. It'll be fine." "I said no, Lisa." His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath it. "I'm not comfortable with it. Please respect my wishes on this." They argued. For the first time in their marriage, Lisa pushed back, refused to simply accept his decision. She told him she was doing the show whether he liked it or not. Min-jun left the studio without another word. The next morning, Lisa woke up to find half her finished pieces missing from her studio. When she asked the housekeeper about them, the woman said she had been told to put them in storage. "Mr. Kang's orders," she said, apologetic but firm. Lisa felt something break inside her that day, but she didn't know how to fix it. She didn't even know if it could be fixed. A few weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, Lisa decided to go for a walk outside the villa grounds. Alone, without telling anyone. She just wanted to feel normal again, to walk down a street without security trailing behind her, to buy a coffee from a regular shop, to exist as an ordinary person for an hour. She made it 3 blocks before she realized someone was following her. Not security. Someone else. A man in a dark jacket keeping pace 20 meters behind. Lisa walked faster. So did he. She turned a corner, trying to lose him in the maze of residential streets. Her heart was pounding. She looked back to see if he was still there, and that's when she collided with someone coming from the opposite direction. The impact knocked her sideways. Lisa's right hand shot out, instinctively to catch herself, and she hit the concrete wall hard. Pain exploded through her hand, sharp and immediate. She gasped, cradling her hand against her chest. The man in the dark jacket was gone. A crowd gathered, concerned voices asking if she was okay. Someone called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor delivered the news with clinical efficiency. 3 broken fingers, severe ligament damage in her wrist, surgery required. Even with physical therapy, he couldn't guarantee she would regain full dexterity. Lisa stared at her bandaged hand and felt her entire world collapse. She was a designer. Her hands were everything. Without them, without the ability to sketch precisely, to sew, to manipulate fabric. What was she? Minjun arrived at the hospital within 20 minutes, breathless and terrified. He held her good hand, kissed her forehead, promised he would get the best specialists, the best care. "I told you it wasn't safe," he whispered. "I told you." And Lisa, drowning in pain medication and shock, let him hold her. Let him make promises. Let him once again tell her that he would keep her safe. She didn't ask how the man in the dark jacket had known where she would be. She didn't ask why he had disappeared the moment she was hurt. She didn't ask, because part of her was afraid of the answer. The surgery took 4 hours. Lisa woke up with her right hand in a cast that extended past her elbow, pins and plates holding broken bones together, her fingers swollen and useless. The surgeon told her she was lucky. Lucky. The word felt like a joke. She was right-handed. Every sketch she had ever drawn, every stitch she had ever sewn, every design that had lived in her imagination and found its way into the world had come through her right hand. Now that hand was a foreign object, wrapped in plaster and gauze, throbbing with every heartbeat. Physical therapy started 2 weeks later. Lisa met with her therapist 3 times a week, doing exercises that felt pointless and painful. Squeeze the ball, rotate your wrist, try to make a fist. Her progress was slow. After 2 months, she could hold a pencil, but her lines were shaky, uncertain. After 4 months, she could grip a needle, but her stitches were uneven, amateurish. Her hand remembered what it used to be able to do, and the gap between memory and reality was devastating. Minjun was supportive in the way he had always been supportive, which was to say, he provided everything except understanding. He hired the best therapists, paid for the best treatment, filled her studio with adaptive equipment. But he didn't understand what it meant to lose the thing that made you yourself. One evening, 8 months after the accident, Lisa was alone in her studio, staring at a half-finished sketch that looked like a child had drawn it. Her right hand ached. Her spirit ached worse. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light. Diamonds glittering, beautiful and permanent. She had tried to take it off once, in the early days, and Minjun had been so hurt, so wounded by the suggestion that she never tried again. Now she twisted it absently, feeling the weight of it, the reminder that even her body wasn't entirely her own anymore. She heard Min Jun's voice downstairs, talking to someone on the phone in Korean. His tone was terse, businesslike. She heard him say a name she didn't recognize, heard him mention money, contracts, complications. Then she heard something that made her freeze. Her name, Lisa, and then another name, Hye-rin. Lisa moved to the studio door as quietly as she could, straining to hear more. Min Jun's voice was too low, the words indistinct. But that name, Hye-rin, hung in the air like smoke, the woman from the garden. Lisa was suddenly, completely certain. The next day, while Min Jun was at work, Lisa did something she had never done before. She went looking for answers. She started in Min Jun's home office, a room she rarely entered. His desk was organized, everything in its place. She went through drawers carefully, not sure what she was looking for, but knowing she would recognize it when she found it. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of business files, she found a folder. Inside were photographs. Wedding photographs. Min Jun in a tuxedo, smiling, standing next to a woman in a white dress. Not Lisa, the woman from the garden, Hye-rin. Lisa's hands shook as she flipped through the photos. They were dated. 8 years ago. There was more. A marriage certificate. Legal documents in Korean that Lisa couldn't fully read but could understand enough. Property deeds, bank accounts. Everything was in 2 names, Kang Min Jun and Seo Hye-rin. Lisa sat on the floor of his office, surrounded by evidence of a life that had nothing to do with her, and tried to understand. Was she the other woman? Was her entire marriage a lie? She heard the front door open downstairs. Min Jun was home early. Lisa shoved everything back into the folder, back into the drawer, and left the office on shaking legs. She made it to her studio before he found her, forced her face into something like normalcy. "Hey," he said, kissing her cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine," Lisa managed. "Yours?" "Long. I'm going to take a shower. Want to order dinner?" "Sure." He left. Lisa stood alone in her studio, surrounded by bolts of fabric she couldn't properly work with anymore, and made a decision. She needed to know the truth. All of it. The next morning, Lisa told Min Jun she had a physical therapy appointment. Instead, she took a taxi to a government office in central Seoul. She had looked up the address the night before, had written down exactly what to say in Korean. The immigration office was crowded, bureaucratic, the kind of place where dreams came to wait in line. Lisa took a number and sat. When they finally called her, she approached the window with her identification, her passport, and a request she had rehearsed a dozen times. "I need a copy of my marriage registration," she said in careful Korean, "and any other documents filed under my name." The clerk typed into her computer, waited, frowned, typed more. "Name again?" Lisa repeated it. The clerk's frown deepened. She called over a supervisor. They spoke in rapid Korean, too fast for Lisa to follow. Then the supervisor turned to Lisa with an expression of professional sympathy that made Lisa's stomach drop. "There's a document here," the supervisor said slowly, clearly. "But it's not a marriage registration. It's a divorce record." And that's how Lisa found herself holding the paper that would destroy everything. The paper that showed her marriage had ended 3 years ago, ended without her knowledge, ended with a signature that looked almost like hers but wasn't quite, ended on a Tuesday when she had been eating breakfast with a man who called her his wife. She stumbled out of the building, the document clutched in her hand, and called her oldest friend, Kioma, back in Lagos. "Chi," Lisa said when Kioma answered, and then she couldn't say anything else. She just cried. Kioma listened. She had always been good at listening. "Tell me everything," Kioma finally said. So Lisa did. She told her about the bracelet, The security, the isolation, the accident, the woman in the garden, the photographs, the divorce she never agreed to. She told her everything while sitting on a bench in a park in Seoul, watching people live normal lives all around her. "Lisa," Kioma said, her voice tight with fury. "You need to get out of there. Today. Right now. Pack a bag and go." "I can't just leave. Where would I go?" "Anywhere. My cousin has an apartment in Busan. She's studying abroad. You can stay there while we figure this out. But you need to leave that house. He'll find me. The bracelet. Take it off." "I can't. He'll know something's wrong." "Lisa, listen to me. That man has been lying to you for years. He had you attacked. He probably has another wife. You are not safe there. Take off the bracelet and run." Lisa looked down at her wrist, at the platinum and diamonds that had always felt like a gift, but now looked exactly like what they were. A chain. That night, Lisa lay in bed next to Min-jun, listening to him breathe. He slept peacefully, like a man with nothing to hide. She waited until she was certain he was deeply asleep. Then she got up and went to her studio. She had been working on something for months now, something she hadn't shown anyone. Learning to design with her left hand had been agony. Every line was wrong, every proportion off. But she had kept trying, kept practicing, because what else was there? And slowly, impossibly, her left hand had begun to remember what her right hand had known. The work was different now. Rougher, more emotional, less technically perfect, but somehow more honest. She pulled out her sketchbook and looked at the design she had been making in secret. Collection ideas that told a story. Her story. Every piece about captivity and freedom, about beautiful cages and the women who escaped them. She took photos of every page, uploaded them to a cloud account Min-jun didn't know about, and began to plan. Over the next 3 weeks, Lisa became someone else. She played the part of the obedient wife, the injured woman who needed protection, the designer who had given up on her dreams. She was sweet and compliant and careful. And in the spaces between, she was meticulously dismantling the life Min-jun had built around her. She found the contact information for the gallery curator who had wanted to show her work. She reached out using an email account she created at a library. She sent her designs. The curator responded within hours. They wanted to meet. Lisa started hiding small amounts of money, cash she skimmed from household expenses. She located her passport, which Min-jun kept in his office safe, and memorized the combination. She contacted Kioma's cousin and secured a place to stay. And she researched. She found out that Seo Hyerin was Min-jun's legal wife, married to him for 10 years. She found out that Min-jun's family was even wealthier than she had imagined, with business interests that skirted the edge of legitimate. She found out that she was not the first woman Min-jun had brought to the villa, though she might have been the first he actually married or pretended to marry, before filing for divorce without her knowledge. The pieces came together slowly, painting a picture of a man who collected beautiful things and kept them until they stopped being convenient. On a Friday night in late autumn, exactly 3 years after the divorce she didn't know about, Lisa put her plan into motion. Min-jun was at a business dinner, one that would keep him out until midnight at least. Lisa waited until the staff had retired for the night. Then she went to her studio and packed a single bag. Sketchbooks, flash drives with her designs, her mother's necklace, her passport, the small amount of cash she had hidden. Everything else, all the beautiful things Min-jun had given her, she left behind. Everything except the bracelet. She stood in the doorway of the villa, looking back at 3 years of her life, 3 years of believing in a lie. Then she walked to the garage where Min-jun's cars were kept, found the one she knew had the keys in it, and drove. She made it 15 minutes before her phone started ringing. Min-jun. She didn't answer. He called again. And again. Lisa pulled over on the side of the highway and looked at the bracelet on her wrist, the tracker that was telling him exactly where she was. She thought about all the ways he had kept her contained, controlled, convinced that prison was safety. Then she took off the bracelet, set it carefully on the hood of the car, and smashed it with a tire iron from the trunk. The diamonds scattered across the pavement like stars. Lisa got back in the car and drove to Busan. The apartment Kiyoma's cousin had left her was small, a studio in a neighborhood Lisa had never heard of, but it was hers. No cameras, no security, no husband who wasn't really her husband. Just space to breathe. The first few days were the hardest. Lisa kept expecting Min-jun to find her, to appear at the door with explanations and apologies and demands. But he didn't come. Maybe he was looking. Maybe he had already moved on to the next beautiful thing. Either way, Lisa was done being found. She met with the gallery curator, a woman named Park Ji-won who looked at Lisa's designs with the kind of attention Lisa had forgotten existed. "These are powerful," Ji-won said, flipping through the sketches. "Angry and beautiful. When can you have pieces ready?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "My hand." She held up her right hand, still weak, still imperfect. "So use your left," Ji-won said, like it was simple. "The work doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be true." So Lisa started sewing, slowly, painfully. Every stitch made with her left hand was a small rebellion, a reclaiming of something that had been taken from her. She worked 12, 14, 16-hour days, losing herself in fabric and thread, building a collection that told the story she hadn't been allowed to tell. 6 months later, the Golden Cage debuted in a gallery in Itaewon. 12 pieces, each one exploring themes of control and freedom, beauty and imprisonment. The centerpiece was a wedding dress, traditional white silk, but the train was made of chains, delicate gold chains that looked like jewelry until you realized they were shackles. The show sold out in 3 days. Fashion blogs picked it up, then magazines, then international press. Lisa did interviews from the small apartment in Busan, telling her story carefully, never mentioning names but making sure everyone understood the truth. Somewhere in Seoul, in a villa in Seongbuk-dong, Min-jun saw the coverage. He saw the designs he would recognize anywhere, made by hands he had tried to break. He saw the woman he had tried to keep leaving the cage and setting it on fire behind her. Lisa never heard from him directly, but she heard through Ji-won that he had called the gallery, asking if there was any way to acquire pieces from the collection. Ji-won told Lisa this over coffee, watching for her reaction. "I told him everything was already sold," Ji-won said. "Was that okay?" Lisa smiled for the first time in what felt like years. That was perfect. Now, 2 years after her escape, Lisa runs her own studio in Seoul, a light-filled space in Yeonam-dong where she designs under her own name, answers to no one, and wears no jewelry she can't remove. Her right hand still aches sometimes. It probably always will. But her left hand has learned to create things her right hand never could, pieces that carry the weight of survival in every seam. Sometimes she thinks about Min-jun, about Hye-rin, about the villa and the cage it represented. She wonders if he ever told Hye-rin the truth, or if that woman is still locked in her own version of the beautiful prison. She wonders if there are other women, other wives who aren't wives, scattered across Seoul in gorgeous apartments with locked doors. Mostly, though, she doesn't think about him at all. She thinks about fabric, about her next collection, about the designer from Lagos who came to Seoul with dreams and had to die so that a new version of herself could be born. She thinks about her mother, who flew to Busan the moment Lisa called and held her while she cried and said, "You're stronger than any dress you'll ever make." And she thinks about freedom, real freedom, The kind that doesn't come with diamonds and cameras and men who call themselves protectors while they tighten the chains. That kind of freedom is worth everything, even if you have to learn to sew with the wrong hand to claim it. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the difference between protection and control, between love and possession, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories about survival, strength, and the complicated ways we find our way back to ourselves. And leave a comment telling me your thoughts, because these stories matter, and your voice matters. Lisa's not just a character. She's every woman who has ever had to choose between comfort and freedom, between the cage and the sky. And she chose the sky.